We human beings will always attempt to rationalize and romanticize certain forms of suffering that spring from attachments that many of us simply refuse to live without, like the kind that are formed as a result of romantic love and other similar states that require lots of struggle and sacrifice. And many will claim that these pains are worth undergoing because the potential for highs that one stands to experience and share with their prospective partner as a result of love are worth all the suffering that either person stands to endure. Or they will claim that there lies great intrinsic beauty and value in all aspects of love, from the euphoric highs all the way down to the soul-crushing lows, many speaking of love in a sort of metaphysical, transcendent sort of sense. And many people will not only use these rationalizations to justify their own continued chasing of it, but will also attempt to justify all of sentient existence as a whole by claiming that the inherent value of love is again sufficiently great, great enough to outweigh the cost of suffering at large. And for the people who genuinely cannot live without the hope of one day finding a partner to share their lives with, the large amounts of struggle, strife, and suffering may actually be worth it for them. But not because romantic love is intrinsically, objectively valuable, but rather because the alternative of living out the remainder of their lives without a partner is even more unbearably painful for them to live with. And the same thing can be said of many addictions that help us to get through each passing day. But like with all powerful addictions and attachments, I would argue that if one were able to live a contented, productive life without it, that this would be ideal. Because like with many addictions, the obscene amount of suffering that many of us will go through as a result of such strong yet ultimately futile attachments don't even come close to covering their own costs, let alone the incomprehensible price tag of sentient life as a whole. And this would be incredibly easy for us to recognize if we weren't so caught up in the addictions ourselves. And this requires us to take a step back and try to make an honest assessment of what it really is that we are so caught up in here. And upon doing this, it should be clear that romantic love, as intoxicating as it can be in the early fleeting moments of it, and as powerfully strong of a bond that it can gradually help form over the years or even decades spent with someone, is ultimately just one of many addictions that keeps us chasing. One of many anchors that provides us with illusory feelings of safety, security, and completeness, until it inevitably comes to an end, as all things do. All of us are addicts to various degrees. And like all addicts, we will go to great lengths to justify our addictions. Even going so far as to claim that our addictions are so special as to warrant the creation of new life for its own sake, and to likewise justify all of the unimaginable suffering that results from it. But with all that said, I do strongly believe that relationships can teach us valuable lessons about ourselves as well as humanity as a whole, and that many virtues can be built upon while in a healthy relationship, such as patience, compassion, understanding, being able to make constructive compromises. But I feel it to be true that nearly all of these same positive qualities that can be built upon while in a relationship can also be strengthened in solitude. And taking the time to strengthen these virtues and to practice self-sufficiency while single will significantly increase the odds of you being able to maintain an intimate, durable, reciprocal relationship later on down the line. Most of us crave companionship so strongly to the point where life feels hollow if we aren't actively trying to find someone else that will fully accept and complete us. Or at the very least, attempting to find someone to romantically indulge in for a short time in order to feed our egos and to get a nice supply of dopamine hits to distract us from the emptiness of existence. I would say just be careful not to allow your overwhelming feelings of attraction and attachment to an individual propel you to make life-altering decisions that you are very likely to come to strongly regret. This is an incredibly slippery slope due to how vulnerable we are to our own impulses, passions, and attachments. I am immensely grateful to have learned this lesson from my own idiotic close calls and foolish mistakes that I've made while under the spell of both love and lust, especially in my late teenage years. Like getting into relationships with girls that I didn't even enjoy being around out of nothing more than a desire for distraction, to also rolling the conception dice a number of times by not being anywhere near as careful to avoid a pregnancy as we should have been, And just think about that. The fact that idiots like me can just recklessly, unintentionally bring about the gradual development of what will eventually become a human being. A human being that will be completely vulnerable to all the potential for great suffering that exists here. And all as a result of such brief moments of pleasure, of thoughtless, animalistic pleasure. Such an insane amount of responsibility resting in the hands of horny, short-sighted primates, many of them practically children. And it happens literally every second of every day. Young idiots like teenage me carelessly playing with fire, with absolutely no respect, no regard for the potential for suffering that they stand to inflict.